give your word? What does it mean to say, I promise? I'm not talking about what we promise to God. I'm talking about what we promise to each other. Sometimes in the family, we simply make our children promises, and we really don't have any intentions of doing what we're promising. We shouldn't make those promises to them. That's not good. To tell them that you promised to do something simply to get them to kind of be quiet. That's not appropriate parenting. We promise our wives and we promise our husbands. We make these promises to our neighbors or to people on the job. Or we promise someone that we will do something, a particular something for them. And then that promise does not manifest itself. And sometimes when it doesn't, we have the best of excuses. I mean, magnificent, none better, tailor-made excuses. But you know, the excuse does not often take the place of the promise that you made. It does not take the place of the vow that you made. It does not take the place of your word. I said to the community last night, it is better not to promise anything. Let people call you stingy and mean, than to make promises that you never keep. If we are not able to keep the promises that we make to each other, how then are we able to keep those secret promises that we make between ourselves and our God? And you might think that it's okay not to keep that promise that you made to God, that God understands. Well, I think that God wants us to absolutely and unequivocally know that when you promise the eternal something and do not fulfill it by way of a vow or an oath, that the eternal calls you a sinner. And that's why on Erev Yom HaKippurim, we come together for a service called Kol Nidre. And if you remember that service, in the Kol Nidre, we talk about it being okay to pray with sin. How do we know what sin you committed? It's not any sin that we saw you do. It's the sin that each of us knew that we did our own individual selves when we did not maintain our vow, our oath, our promise. Words do not carry the power in this culture that they used to carry in just the culture of African Americans. There was a time when people, if they promised you something, you could bet your bottom dollar that if they had life, they were going to do what they promised. They were going to fulfill their word to you. Because that's all we had at the time, was our word to each other. We had to count on that word. We had to rely on that word. Because the broader society in many instances was not there to give us the service that the rest of the society received. So we had to rely on each other. We had to depend on each other. Some of us weren't born in hospitals. Some of us were born at home with a midwife that came from down the road. It didn't matter if it was summertime, or very hot, or very late at night, or very cold, or very snowy. She knew that she had to serve. She knew that there was no doctor coming and no hospital that might even take you. So we had to rely on ourselves. We had to rely on our word and our promises to each other. But now that everything is opened up, we can say anything and just let words roll right off of our lips. They have no power at all. So today, I simply want to encourage you in a few minutes to understand that your vows and your oaths to the eternal are serious. They're just as serious as to what we promise family members. They're just as serious as to what we promise people that we work with. They're just as serious as the words that we give to our children. I've told you before about that ancient rabbinic saying. It says, promise little and do much. In other words, don't promise a whole lot and do a very little. But it's okay to promise a little and do more than you have promised to do. But when you promise a lot, people have expectations. And when people put their expectations, their hopes, and they rely on you. Have any of you ever been let down by a person? Did that feel good? It feels terrible. And if you've ever let anyone down, I hope you felt terrible about letting someone down, about not keeping your word. But if it's just like water rolling off your back, then this is not for you. Because we have to get back to that time. We have to get back to that time, not operating out of the context that this society operates in, where we will say anything and it's all right to say anything at any time to anyone, but to maintain and sustain our words with each other. There was a time in this country African Americans could not shop in stores downtown Chicago. There were restaurants that we could not eat in downtown Chicago. I'm not talking about Mississippi and Alabama and Georgia and South and North Carolina and Florida. I'm talking about the Steak and Lake restaurant right on Lake Street at State Street. Did not allow people of color in there to eat. I'm talking about this very neighborhood that this synagogue itself is located in. When black folks worked in Nabisco, it was only through agreement. Oh, he worked there, that they could come from Nabisco. They had to go to the bus stop, get on the bus, go home. Don't be walking through this neighborhood looking for some housing. It wasn't happening. That's why I have such admiration for the rabbi who built this synagogue, Rabbi Schultz. And I often talk about that he was kind of like a short guy. If you remember when we first got here, there was a little couple of stands that the rabbi used to stand on, because the rabbi was about 5'2" or 5'3". And if you remember his daughter, Ruth, she's a small woman too. Well, the rabbi may have been small in stature, but he was a giant in spirit. He was a giant in spirit because despite the fact that the headquarters of the American Nazi Party was on 70,000 men working with Dr. King and said, I want this place to be a place of refuge. If you need a place to bring Dr. King for safety, against the wishes of many of the officers of his congregation who didn't want to get involved because they had a truce people took everything a lot more serious. You had to be serious when the grocer promised to let you get food and you promised to pay when you got a little money. And you didn't have to have it all. Maybe all you had was a little something on it, like Zaken said. I got a little something on it. Just to let you know that I haven't forgotten. Sometimes people will forget you. Because our words no longer have power. I laugh sometimes when I hear people say, oh, I don't swear. So it's good that you don't. It's good that you don't swear. And you probably shouldn't affirm either. Because when you affirm, that is just like swearing. It is saying that what I am speaking is the truth as I know it and understand it, and that's how I'm giving it to you. What? Wait. Your words. Let us be visited, think, and come to that place that when we give vows to God, nobody has got to hear that vow that you give to God. Only the eternal. That we are considered sinners when we do not maintain that oath or that vow. How much more so to our children, to our spouses, to our parents, to simply give our words, and we know that we don't mean what we say. We're simply saying something. Because that's how the culture and the society works today. I want to conclude with this. Murder is not good. But this was a rough Parshah because the Israelites were told to go in and to annihilate every male of the people, the Midianite people. The Midianite people. Well, it was the Midianite people that saved Moses. That's why Moses didn't go to this battle. It was Jethro, the Midianite, who gave him shelter. It was Jethro, the Midianite, who gave him his daughter Zipporah in marriage. It was Jethro, the Midianite, that said, what are you doing? You're going to wear yourself and his people out. You trying to do everything all by yourself. Why don't you go ask God, shouldn't you have people that judge hundreds and judge 50s and judge thousands? And the hard cases, let them bring to you, Moses. There was a Midianite. But sometimes in life, relationships change. Sometimes in life, relationships change. We may not want them to change. We may not know why they change. But the relationship is changed. And such is the instance between the Midianites and the Israelites. But Moses, thinking back on that personal relationship that he had with the Midianites, only sent them to war against Midian. He did not lead them to war against the Midianites. Because he remembered a time in that relationship when it was good. Sometimes we have to realize too, in relationships, when it's time to move on. Yes, sir. It's time to let go and move on. As the Israelites had to do with the Midianites. trying to be upright, straightforward, honest in your dealings, but yet what you get back is untrue, insincerity. Sometimes one must learn to move on from that. That person's word doesn't mean your word means to you. You have to appreciate it. Because it was the Midianites, when the Balaam said, this is what you need to do. I cannot curse them. But you can cause the people to curse themselves by leading them astray. Who did they lead astray? They didn't lead the women of Israel astray. They put the Midianite women on the Israelite men and took them all the way out the box, down the street and around the corner. Didn't want a sister wearing that culture. You know what I'm talking about? Didn't want a sister wearing a natural. You know what I'm talking about. Wanted that hair. I ain't trying to mess with nobody. I didn't want to say that now. Wanted that hair from India. I didn't mess with nobody. I'm just saying, you know, we don't accept or necessarily appreciate what God has given us. We think that what someone else has, somehow or another, is a mark of beauty. I'm just saying. People can do what they want to do. I'm not going there with nobody. I'm not trying to mess with nobody. But if God wanted fingernails to be 40 inches long on one hand, these are made fingernails. I'm not messing with nobody. I'm just saying. Just saying. Maybe God did want Botox to come into existence. You get shots in all parts of your body to blow up things that were this big and make them this big. I don't know. Just saying. I don't know, man. But I do know that every people have very distinctive marks of beauty within themselves, and if you don't see your own beauty, and if your idea of beauty is the mark of beauty in someone else, you're lost. Now, you know, I'm just saying. You know, people do what they need to do to make themselves look good to themselves. But are you really doing that, thinking that, I mean, I'll leave that alone. But be who you are. There you go. There you go. And find the beauty within you. There you go. Within you, within how you are made. Short, tall. Don't worry about them calling you a tall, man. It's okay. You are comfortable in your own skin. In the recesses of your own being. Find that truth within our own being. I mean, never had any business putting processes in their head. Or trying to bleach their skin with an idea that somehow or another that was equated with being handsome. Until a period hit us. And they said, we have to be natural. We can't be trying to look like other folks. And that's true. So everything that you see is not necessarily good for you. And every relationship that you have may not always remain the same as it was. And what we have to appreciate are those that we used to be in relationship with, that will take us off of our course and onto a course that they've set for themselves, or that they want us to follow them in. And this is what happened to the men of Israel. When the Midianite women took them off course. But yet